We were there, Steve, to watch the Ravens play the Steelers in the wild card round, and this was the 6th consecutive playoff defeat by at least 21 points for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
21.
That, my friend, is not good postseason football. So the conversation comes around once again. Is it time to part ways with Mike Tomlin? It is oftentimes, in previous years, scoffed at.
How dare he think that way?
He's one of, let's establish it right off the bat, one of the best coaches in the NFL, hands down, like in that top group. But the reason that you have the discussion, Steve, is what I just said and what's happened in 18 years. But your take on, is it time to part ways with Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh? Is that conversation finally reached a point to where it's valid?
I don't know if it's valid. 18 years is a long time. I think Harbaugh's on 17, right? I think 18 years. There's been a lot of great players come out of there under Mike T. Some people would say he inherited a championship team. That's true. That may be false. He took the team there.
He's one of the pillars of their success because there's multiple things that make an organization good. He's been one of them.
Absolutely. It hasn't been great all the time, but it hasn't been 18 years of misery either, right? They've been competitive. They've drafted some guys, some good receivers, some great receivers. There's some Hall of Famers. How things have transpired, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. But to put it all on Coach T, I don't know if it's fair. Just like to say it's all him, I don't know if it's fair. I don't know what they should do. However, I can tell you what they ain't. They ain't a team with a good quarterback. If you don't have a good quarterback and you fire your head coach, and let's be honest, this is a team you fire or move on from Mike T. Now you throw yourself into one of these murky situations where the Cowboys have parted ways with their team. And so now you're in competition to get the best coach, in competition with Jacksonville Jaguars. Which team is more appealing, the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Jacksonville Jaguars? Pittsburgh Steelers, Jacksonville Jaguars, or the Cowboys?
I don't find the Cowboys appealing.
Pittsburgh Steelers, Cowboys, Jaguars, who else?
The Bears, the Jets.
The Bears, the Jets.
And the Saints.
And the Saints. Do you go? It's just.
Do you want to get into that group? Do you want to get into that race? Is what you're saying?
I don't know if I want to be in that race, boy.
No, but here, real quick to go back to it.
Go ahead.
You mentioned the quarterback situation. Let's get to that before we get to Mike T real quick, because I do want to say this. This is probably not talked about enough. If you are in the AFC for the next 8 years, you are most likely competing for 3 playoff spots, because Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and most likely Joe Burrow, because it took a complete anomaly for him to be out of the postseason this year. Yeah. Those 4 guys are almost magic markered, sharpied into the postseason every year. So how do you compete for those other 3 spots in the AFC?
You know what I say. Man, that's them T's and P's, baby. Thoughts and prayers.
Listen, and I bet you that's what's going through those buildings. Because at the same time, you also have, what do we see rookie year from C.J. Stroud? This year was a step back, but Stroud's right in that mix as a really, really good quarterback. What if the next head coach comes in and gets Trevor Lawrence going, and all of a sudden that's another quarterback? What if Justin Herbert in year 1 with Jim Harbaugh, what did we see? We saw really, really good growth from that team and that quarterback. If you don't have one in the AFC right now, I just listed 3 more teams that could be potentially taking up those last 3 spots. And so, as Pittsburgh's trying to figure out their quarterback spot, right now, Russ says he wants to be back. I don't know if that's the feeling of everybody in the building. I don't know if that's the feeling of some people in the building from this year. There were people in there, Steve, that thought Fields should have kept playing. Where do they go from here? Quarterback-wise is a huge part of the future of the Steelers. It might be in Russ's best interest to go back there. It might be in the Steelers' best interest with limited options that they just go, this is what we have. This is what we have to work with when you look at the options that they might be dealt, because Mike Tomlin continues to, as our buddy also working for Underdog on Heed the Call, Dan Hanzus calls it, elite mediocrity is what the Steelers have been the last several years. They're fantastic at obviously never a losing season, right? Under Mike Tomlin, 18 years, which is insane. So they never bottom out. But when you go into the postseason this year, and I think why this conversation is here, like we had this conversation on this show, and we took a lot of heat after that game in Philadelphia back end of the year that I was at. It had just plummeted after that. And did you see, I guess not to throw the Steelers under the bus, Steve, but it looked like a lackluster effort when we were there at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. It was the Ravens were able to do kind of bully ball and what they wanted to do.
I know some people have said, I heard people saying that the team quit, they didn't have effort. I mean, when you're playing a more superior team,
it's going to look that way.
It's going to look that way. And people can take this for what it is just because I have a lot of Raven stuff in the background.
Certainly do.
But the problem is that's what happened. And that's the product that was put on the field. I don't believe those guys went in there and just quit. I think they just got outplayed. That they were running the football. It was 18 degrees. It was cold. And they were pounding the football. They were running the football. You could see that they had a mission to run the football. Obviously, with Zay Flowers not being in there, there was a question mark. Who was going to be the wide receiver to step up? Well, they said the running game will. And that's...
We'll go 12.
Yes, and it was a very good game if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan. And it is a disappointing outing for the Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And so when you have that kind of landslide, there always is an expectation of heads will roll and someone has to take the fall for being dismantled by a team in the playoffs like that.
From your division. Yep. And so this is what I came up with, Steve, on what could possibly happen. And you tell me what you think. But yes, what you're saying is right. Outside of a Lamar Jackson kneel down, that's a 300-yard rushing performance. It was 299. He took a knee. It was at 300.
See, and look, the T's and P's are already working. Thoughts and prayers. The Lord took 1 yard away.
Well, thank goodness for 299 and it wasn't 300. And the other one that stands out to me, I just have to say it. The Ravens had more first downs, 18, than the Steelers ran plays, 17 in the first half. That's hard to do. That's controlling the game. So we've seen great coaches depart for a variety of reasons. We saw it was just time for Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
Everybody there felt like it was time. And Pete's now trying to get back into the head coaching cycle. It was time for Sean Payton to walk away from the Saints. He left it in a mess, but and now he's off in Denver. But it was time for Sean Payton and the Saints to part ways. So the question is it time for these two to eventually part ways? And that's no slight, and I'm going to make this point, to the Steelers, and that's no slight to Mike Tomlin. Because the last example I want to give has worked out for both sides and has been beneficial to the coach and the organization that let him go.
Who?
Here's the deal, people. All season long, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Only on Underdog. Pick higher or lower on your favorite player, and you can join the millions of fans winning millions this season. Sign up today using promo code UD89, and you'll get a free pick as part of your first cash entry, plus $1,000 in bonus cash. Again, promo code UD89 to cash in on every touchdown this season, only on Underdog. The last example I want to give has worked out for both sides, and that's Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Andy Reid spent 14 years in Philadelphia, had 3 losing seasons. He's the best coach in the history of the franchise, has 130 wins, more than anyone else in the history of the franchise. Went to a Super Bowl, 5 conference championship games.
3 or 4 consecutive?
4 consecutive NFC championship games.
Yeah.
10 playoff games, most in franchise history. 6 division titles. He was outstanding. I remember covering the Super Bowl between the Eagles and the Chiefs. Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, said it was the toughest decision he's ever had to make. He knew he was letting a Hall of Fame coach leave his building. That's how highly he thought of Andy Reid. When Andy Reid addressed the team for the final time, he got a standing ovation by the players. It had just gotten to a point to where Andy did have some personal stuff off the field. His son Garrett passed away at training camp. Unbelievable situation, tragic situation. They bought him out and win just 4 games that year. So it did hit a spot to where ownership did say, and Mike Tomlin and the Steelers haven't gotten to this because they got to postseason again, but it did get to a spot in Philadelphia where ownership's, maybe it's time for a change of environment, and maybe the message needs to change in our building. But it doesn't mean we think Andy Reid's a bad coach. And I think that can be the same thing with the Steelers. I think you could look at it and the Steelers could be very open as the Eagles have been, as they were when the firing happened, about how they thought of Andy Reid, how quickly they knew he'd get another job, how they just felt it was time to part ways to change the message, and maybe time for the head coach as well. And you could say both parties, Steve, benefited.
Yes.
Who won a Super Bowl first after those two parted? The Eagles or Andy Reid? The Eagles.
Eagles.
They won a Super Bowl before Andy won a Super Bowl. Now, he's had unbelievable success finding a quarterback. Could that happen to Mike T? What happens if he finds another top-tier quarterback like he had in the early portion of his time in Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger? So that benefited, that divorce was very amicable. We're not fighting over the kids and who gets them this weekend and who takes them to soccer. We're watching them at the soccer game together. Like we are completely amicable together. So Andy Reid benefits from the departure. The Eagles, we could say, have benefited from the departure as well. And so that comparison to me kind of stands out as going, can this happen? And I'm not saying it is, to where everybody benefits.
I love what you're saying. I'm sitting here just amazed. I should have told me you're going to do all of this. I would have went and got my popcorn. This is a daytime soap opera.
Right.
General Hospital, baby. Well, I like it.
Well, better writing, but yeah, I think so.
That's pretty good. I mean, you convinced me. I just like Coach T. I know
I love him, and that's the thing. Everybody in Philly loves Andy.
I shouldn't. I just, right before the game, me and him was talking, and he was like, "Hey, no hard feelings, but we're gonna get in your ass." I said, "Well, professional dislike to you too." I walked away and said, I'm not playing anymore.
All right, well, Steve, what do you think? So when you get that interaction, what would that messaging be like in a brand new building, in a brand new environment? Andy is a better coach now than he was in Philadelphia.
I love it. Well, cool connection with me and Andy. I love Andy too. Cool connection with me and Andy. Andy Reid and I graduated from the same high school. Andy Reid went to University High School in Los Angeles, California, and I went to University High School. Obviously not at the exact same time.
No.
But Andy told me that, and I was like, wow. And he's always been that guy, right? Text him congratulations. He'll text me sometimes, and it's just really cool. Like, Andy's been one of these guys. You're his guy, you're in his circle, you're in there for life, right? And I would imagine Coach T is like that because some of the people that I've talked to, some of the people that I have had opportunities to kind of ask them, what is Coach Tomlin like? And a lot of the same similar things where he shoots you straight. He coaches you hard. He loves on you with true intentions and authenticity in a way that is just abnormal. And it's abnormal when you look at some of these places some of these coaches have been, and you look at how long they've been there. And so that leads me to think I can understand that you bring that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of perspective to a new team. And here's where it gets good. With that new team, you're also going to have a new facility, new perspective, a different voice. You're having to implement the type of way you run an organization and manage, and possibly work with a different general manager or assistant general manager who was just a guy who was, giving suggestions. And now that general manager who was an assistant, now his suggestions aren't suggestions. His actions actually can come to fruition. And I think that can help because guys do, when you're with someone for a very long time, you can anticipate what they're going to do, how they're going to do things. And we'll get into it later. It's like with the Rams and Minnesota is when you're going against someone you've been with for a long time and know exactly how they think and what they can anticipate, sometimes the element of surprise is not there anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And in that division in the AFC North, I don't think with Cincinnati, Baltimore, especially with Baltimore and Cleveland, the element of surprise for Mike Tomlin and the type of team that they will be is they're going to run the football, they're going to have really good special teams, and their defense is going to be lights out. Outside of Ben Roethlisberger, there's always been a question mark. You had the bus, Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker. It's just been one of those things. And then you talk about now, prior to he's playing with Arizona, James Conner, Le'Veon Bell, now Harris. It's just, you know what's coming. There's no surprise in the book anymore. And so based off what you're saying, if it's a parting ways with him starting at a new place, yes. But if it's to get rid of him because he can't coach anymore, I disagree with that totally.
I don't think that's the case.
I don't think that's the case either, because we've seen this year and last year in certain places and different faces. We know what good coaching or not good coaching looks like.
Yeah.
We looked at the Carolina Panthers with Frank Reich. We looked at Frank Reich when he was let go in Indy. You look at Matt Eberflus in Chicago. Like, there are a number of teams that you could say that check the box of, okay, coach.
So, Steve, what's one of the biggest things we always say in the NFL? If you got two quarterbacks, you got none. He went to the postseason with two quarterbacks. That's good coaching. That's figuring out a way to win games with the situation that you've been given.
Well, they only used one.
Well, I mean, you had one, and then you switched while you were winning to another one, and you kept winning.
And started winning. Yes.
Started winning again. You kept winning until
late into the season, and there was enough film to understand how to confuse and slow down the passing game.
True, but my point is, these were two quarterbacks that nobody else in the league wanted, and he went to the postseason starting with one and then playing the other. I mean, that's like, we're not denying Mike's a good coach. I'm making the argument we've seen a better cultural builder in Andy Reid when he got to Kansas City from what he learned from the first 14 years in Philadelphia. We've seen him have the ability to create an environment that is one of the best in the NFL. What does Mike T, if he has the opportunity to go into another building, have to do from the 18 years that he learned and succeeded in Pittsburgh? Because let's call it 18 years of really success. Never had a losing season.
Yeah.
The only difference I have is what happened with Andy is it did eventually bottom out with 4 wins that last season.
Yeah, that's true.
You'd have
but he had the same issues too that Coach Tomlin's having.
People in Philly wanted to murder him all the time. Andy can't manage the clock. Andy can't do this. Andy can't run the ball.
Sounds familiar.
And now Andy, he is a Hall of Fame coach. And so I'm just wondering, that situation is one that comes up to me that worked out for the team and the head coach.